The recipe for a successful solo debut. The successful solo debuts. The solo debuts that deserved more love. The past couple of episodes have covered the topic of success as a solo artist. But success is hard to come by, and for seiyuu aiming to be solo artists, it isn't always a synonym of that success carrying over to their careers as seiyuu. Meanwhile, there are seiyuu that actually never set foot, or barely set foot, in the music industry and are insanely popular. How come? It is really possible for seiyuu to be popular without a solo career? Let's kick off this episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Welcome to Seiyuu Lounge. I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is: can seiyuu be popular without a solo career? This episode is inspired by a comment by Ixirei on episode 47 of Seiyuu Lounge about the idol culture influencing seiyuu artists' careers, namely the diets and visual upgrades. The comment is as follows. This is a topic I was also thinking about a long time since getting interested in seiyuu. For example, while there are popular young, handsome male seiyuus, we can still see that many veteran seiyuus are still considered popular. For example, Takahiro Sakurai or Tomokazu Sugita, who don't have traditional idol good looks or have solo careers. Thank you so much for your comment and for inspiring this episode. This was actually a topic that I covered lightly on episodes 10 and 11 when I spoke about how much the seiyuu industry has changed since the 90s up until now, as well as how much have the lines blurred between seiyuu and talento. Looking at how the seiyuu industry is nowadays, you'd be right to think that the trend is for seiyuu to be active in the music industry. In a way, that trend is shifting towards seiyuu being active on variety TV shows and guesting on dramas. So you'd also be correct to come to the conclusion that to be successful, seiyuu have to branch out and actually do work in a wide variety of fields in the entertainment industry. Well, if those are your initial thoughts, you're not necessarily wrong, and I'll explain why in this episode. Are there seiyuu that focus fully on voice acting, dubbing, and narration? There are. These are the ones that I call career seiyuu or purist seiyuu. They are the ones that still do exactly what was required of seiyuu back in the 80s, which is voice acting. That is still a thing, so if you're a purist as well, there are still seiyuu that don't have intentions of joining the music industry. However, it's not as popular as 20 years ago. Are career seiyuu still a thing? To put it simply, career or purist seiyuu are a dying breed. Let's see why. The seiyuu industry has been in constant transformation since the 90s. That's when you got the very first seiyuu units or even 2D units in EMU and Weißkreuz. That's when some of the now legendary and respected seiyuu had their solo debuts. Just check Shoayami, Kazuhiko Inoue and Koichi Yamadera. Seiyuu venturing to the music industry isn't a trend that was started in the noughties or in the past decade. It actually dates back to the 90s. So when veteran fans of seiyuu wish seiyuu nowadays wouldn't sing, and they justify it by mentioning that old school seiyuu did not sing, well, I am afraid to say that those veteran fans do not know their seiyuu history that well. Seiyuu being solo artists is a thing that has been happening since the 90s. Seiyuu performing character songs is a thing that started in the noughties thanks to the Angelique Otome Games franchise. 2D music projects have been a thing since the 10s. These are not new things. I'm talking about almost 30 years of history of solo debuts by some of the most buzzworthy seiyuu in each decade. Over 20 years of character songs and over 10 years of 2D music projects. Performing music is something that is common since the 90s. Seiyuu performing music is something that the ever-changing voice acting industry in Japan slowly has turned into a normal thing. After all, seiyuu are voice professionals. People that use their voice to tell stories, to give life to characters. Now, think with me. When seiyuu are performing music, aren't they all using their voice to tell stories and giving life to the characters in those lyrics? The answer is yes. So of course, seiyuu performing music is a natural thing and shouldn't be seen as a bad thing that came to kill the seiyuu industry or is diluting the seiyuu industry. That's not the case. However, I can agree that there's a weird mentality of if seiyuu don't make a solo debut, they will never be successful. That couldn't be further from the truth. Why? Popularity from solo careers sometimes doesn't carry over to that seiyuu's voice acting work. That's the truth, and that's because there are people that are fan of seiyuu as solo artists, but do not watch anime. As simple as that. Also, not all seiyuu that make solo debuts encounter success. The success stories are very few. The music industry is as ruthless as it ever was. It isn't easier because they are seiyuu artists. There's no special treatment. Seiyuu artists have their music charting in the same charts as successful artists, both domestic and international. They are, from the get-go, getting into a really risky industry and can, in some cases, see their solo careers tank before they even take off. These two reasons should give you an idea of the risks of a solo debut and on relying too much on popularity in the music industry. The music industry sure is appealing to the younger generations of seiyuu that have joined the industry in the last decade. It is now, more than ever, extremely appealing as music labels no longer wait for seiyuu to have 7 years of career before signing them for a solo debut. As long as seiyuu are good singers and fit the roles they audition for in 2D music projects, they can end up having a relatively good exposure and eventually get the opportunity to have a solo career. In the rare case of those seiyuu joining projects that end up being extremely successful, it can actually boost their popularity as seiyuu, with anime directors wanting to bring them in to the cast just for that extra exposure that is associated to their popularity. For example, when the Hypnosis Mic franchise got its popularity boom in 2018, did you notice how many seiyuu part of the cast and previously not popular started to be cast in almost all anime series that premiered in that year? Did you also notice that at least 2 seiyuu from Hypnosis Mic were in the same anime projects or even drama CDs? That's when a really popular project actually ends up boosting the popularity of the seiyuu involved. Anime and drama CD directors knew that fans of Hypnosis Mic were consuming all media in which those seiyuu were. In a way, casting the seiyuu for their projects was a no-brainer. People would watch. People would consume just because they had that popularity from Hypnosis Mic. Not to say that all seiyuu from the Hypnosis Mic franchise were undeservingly cast in anime and drama CDs in 2018. But there were certainly some weird, I'd say borderline intentional lineups for some anime and drama CDs that featured many of the seiyuu part of Hypnosis Mic. Which leads me to speculate that talent wasn't at the core of those castings. Those seiyuu were handpicked for those projects based solely on their popularity. From a business perspective, that was a choice made by the anime and drama CD directors to try to make some easy money off of that seiyuu's popularity. Nothing wrong with that, as well as nothing wrong with Hypnosis Mic's seiyuu cast to earn money for their work, regardless if they deserved or not the roles based on their skills or just their popularity. The seiyuu industry is that, an industry. People are working to make money. However, notice why Seiyu wants to be part of 2D music projects instead of just doing studio work like narration, dubbing, and regular voice acting. If there's even a slim chance that what happened to the Seiyu in the Utapri, Idolish 7, A3 and Hypnosis Mic franchises happens to all Seiyu part of other 2D music projects, Seiyu could get a lot of work in the future and actually be popular without the effort that is required when no music is involved. That's what leads to that mentality of if Seiyu do not make a solo debut or join a 2D music project, they'll never be popular. It has been exacerbated to a ridiculous point. Seiyu should know better that every year there are around 6 up to 8 new 2D music projects, and perhaps one of those projects ends up being popular. The unsuccessful 2D music projects are more than the successful ones. So I really don't know why some Seiyu, especially rookies, are so blinded by the mentality of if Seiyu do not make a solo debut or join a 2D music project, they'll never be popular. There's no strong basis to justify that mindset to begin with. Also, if you think some Seiyu are using the voice acting industry as a stepping stone for a career as artists, I'll agree with you. I am talking about rookies that immediately want to make a solo debut. It makes you question whether they are really Seiyu or just using that status to quickly join an industry that they couldn't otherwise join because of whatever reason. Although still not a trend, it is already giving some worrying signs, but I won't dive into it. To sum this part, joining the music industry is appealing for Seiyu. No matter how very few 2D music projects or solo debuts end up being successful, the sheer chance that small percentage of successful stories is enough for some Seiyu to want to gamble and try their luck in the music industry. And that's why I believe career or purist Seiyu are a dying breed. Seiyu can be successful if they do not have a solo career. Yes, that's something I do believe is possible, although there are some challenges to it, and that's not because voice acting is more difficult than singing. That's a ridiculous point, as both voice acting and singing are difficult. Both require skill to sound good. That's why there are good voice actors and good singers, and that's why there are bad voice actors and bad singers. Voice acting and singing involve skill and technique. So you shouldn't say that singing is an easy way out for Seiyu to be popular. It involves skill, and there are a lot of external factors that heavily influence the success Seiyu can experience. The music industry doesn't reward good singers. It rewards popular ones first and foremost. If those are good singers or not, it is a case-by-case situation. Also, Seiyu that are singers need to learn how to sing, or if they already know, they need to constantly improve their singing. That's not easy, and many times Seiyu do have to take singing classes outside of their work as voice actors. That's extra work, so in no way singing is easy or an easy way to be popular. Same thing with voice actors. Purist or career Seiyu needs to be skilled. In a way, all Seiyu active in the industry are skilled. Auditions to join Seiyu schools are difficult as hell, the classes are far from easy, and their final tests to graduate are not easy as well. But you shouldn't also say that Seiyu that avoid or refuse to join the music industry chose the difficult route in their career, thus their career is more valuable than that of those that chose to do work in the music industry on top of their voice acting work. And that's because purist or career Seiyu do not need to learn anything beyond what they did at voice acting school and what veterans taught them during recordings. Once they have their voice acting style set and have assimilated all tips given during recordings, those Seiyu have a formula that doesn't need to be changed in order to attract attention or win them auditions. If anything, being a purist or career Seiyu sounds like the easiest route as it involves the least amount of work. And that's because, as a good and talented purist or career seiyuu, once they have a formula, they stick with it and do not change it. Their popularity will eventually be tied to a specific type of character that suits their voice best. As for seiyuu that juggle voice acting and singing as solo artists and/or part of 2D music projects, not only do they have to create that formula, but then they have to constantly reinvent themselves as solo artists to stay relevant, learn or improve their singing skills, have to care for their looks because those help sell their music, and, in the case of 2D music projects, sing music with a lot of instructions to follow in order for the character and story to connect with the listener. So if the difference in difficulty between voice acting and singing isn't what makes being a purist or career seiyuu a bit challenging on its own, what is? Auditions, anime and sound directors, and age. Those are the 4 things that end up being challenging for seiyuu that choose to only do traditional voice acting work of anime dubbing, narration, and foreign movies and series dubbing. Let me cover the 4 issues. Auditions. On episode 9, I covered a lot about auditions and how difficult those are for seiyuu. Influences play a big role in some auditions, personal contacts with the producers or directors can rig auditions. Other times seiyuu are just incredibly unlucky and they can't pass the auditions they sign up to. When it comes to anime auditions, all seiyuu, regardless if they are purists or have their feet on other sides of the entertainment industry, will have to attend those. And they will have to do so until they retire. In very specific cases, seiyuu will be chosen by anime or sound directors or even the creators of the work being adapted instead of having to attend an audition. But that is rare and only reserved for seiyuu already with some popularity in the industry. So that will continue to be a challenge for purist seiyuu no matter how specialized they are in voicing certain types of characters. Every year, 1,000 rookie seiyuu join the industry. Out of those, there's always an exciting batch of seiyuu with similar voice tones to the already popular seiyuu. You get the gist. Anime and sound directors. As I've mentioned on episode 9, there's corruption and power plays in the seiyuu industry, and that comes from the top anime and sound directors. There are some anime and sound directors that have to always work with their favorites. I won't be naming the seiyuu in question, however, if you check the anime series Jin Aketagawa has directed, you'll notice who are his favorite seiyuu. It is not a coincidence that those names are frequently cast in his works. It was even reported by Japanese news outlets that Aketagawa plays favorites in all anime he directs. With the auditions being rigged from the start for some roles, he already chose his favorites to voice. Like him, many other anime and sound directors play favorites. Unless purist or career seiyuu try to join those favorite lists of anime and sound directors, and thus working their way up in a dirty way, they will face the same difficulties as seiyuu that have their feet on other fields in the entertainment industry. Age. People age and voices age as well. Some seiyuu are able to have their young voice preserved as they get older, and thus they continue to get solid supporting or even leading roles. If their voice happens to age and sound older, it will be inevitable for them to start voicing minor characters like the father of the main character or a minor bad guy. In rare cases, they'll get to voice a main bad character, but only in the case the anime series has a mature tone to it, otherwise anime and sound directors prefer younger sounding seiyuu. Age works against seiyuu. When their voice is considered too old for the regular anime character, you start to hear less and less of them in anime as they decide to make a transition to dubbing and narration. That transition is not at will because seiyuu are handpicked for narration and dubbing, so once again, unless they have really good narration or dubbing skills, or are friends with the directors, they can see their work as seiyuu drop drastically and not even transition to narration and dubbing. Being solely a purist or career seiyuu has 4 problems: auditions, anime and sound directors, and age. Looking at those 4 problems in comparison, the music industry is more forgiving, although harder to keep up with because, as I told you before, for seiyuu that want to truly be considered good singers, they have to put in the effort to innovate and improve time and time again. There are mostly no worries about any of those things. Let's see. There are no auditions to be a solo artist, just their work into the music projects or their want to be singers sometimes give seiyuu the opportunity to join the music industry. Seiyuu artists don't have to worry about directors at all. As long as their music label has power, they can have all the exposure they need. Seiyuu that perform music as part of 2D music projects will need to continuously have good singing skills in order to pass the singing auditions at the core of joining new 2D music projects. They are chosen solely based on their singing skills and how those fit with what the creators envisioned certain characters would sound like. It's hard to rig singing auditions, especially when the input of the original creators is added to that of the sound director. And in the music industry, growing old means that younger people won't be into that seiyuu, at least when it comes to their looks, but if their voice holds up, they can continue their solo career for as long as they have fans of their music or continue to innovate. So in a way, the music career is more forgiving. So like I said before, seiyuu can be popular without having a solo career or joining 2D music projects. If they impress the right people and have a voice tone, talent, or technique that makes them one of a kind, seiyuu that choose to not have a solo career or join 2D music projects can be successful. Additionally, they can have contacts in the industry that will indicate them for some roles, give them access to exclusive auditions for important roles, or even go the favorites route, the easiest, however the dirtiest route that really doesn't rely on talent to be popular and successful. To wrap up this episode, let me give you 3 examples of seiyuu that are extremely popular without having set foot in the music industry either as solo acts or part of 2D music projects. You may already have an idea of who I'll be mentioning: Tomokazu Sugita, Takahiro Sakurai, and Kenjiro Tsuda. None of these seiyuu have kicked off a solo career. None of these seiyuu have joined 2D music projects to be part of those groups. Yet they are extremely popular doing what they do. Tomokazu Sugita is the artsy seiyuu. Almost 75% of his work is anime, dubbing, or narration in various types of media. The other 15% includes being a writer, designer, YouTuber, between many other things. He's one of the most beloved and popular seiyuu, never sang a song for 2D music projects or in his own name. He's got a unique voice tone and is known for being a specialist for very specific types of characters, usually really extravagant ones. His voice has aged a bit, but since he has always been a bass, and that voice tone is really rare among seiyuu, he continues to be chosen to do a lot of work. Takahiro Sakurai is what you can actively call a career seiyuu. Despite having been part of a seiyuu unit in the noughties alongside Kenichi Suzumura and performed a couple of character songs in the noughties, since 2010 Sakurai refuses to sing and does not want to have a solo artist career. He's focused completely on his career as a purist seiyuu. He does anime, dubbing, narration, and radio work. Occasionally he hosts variety shows. Is the closest you have to a purist seiyuu. He's got a unique voice and skill set that make him a choice for a very specific type of character. Still, he's got some versatility to him and his voice hasn't aged much. Something that has enabled him to continue to get leading roles in anime despite being way into his 40s. This type of seiyuu is a dying breed. Sakurai even admitted that in an interview when promoting Infinity Force in 2017. And Kenjiro Tsuda has seen his popularity rise the older he gets, while also not having made a solo debut nor joining 2D music groups. He does a lot of dubbing and narration work and some anime work in the mix. As of late, he has been focusing more on acting and directing, so you can't say he's a purist, but given how he's managed to stay away from the music industry and still turn into a popular seiyuu is impressive. Like Sugita, Tsuda has a unique voice tone among seiyuu. He's also a bass, but a smoother one, with an interesting twist that enables him to voice a wide variety of characters in anime. His voice has aged a bit, but nothing too drastic, so he does keep being cast in anime roles, even as he's now into his 50s. To wrap up this episode, yes, seiyuu can be popular without having a solo career or caring about looks. It involves a lot of focused work and networking in order for it to work well on the long run. Is it difficult to be a seiyuu that doesn't venture to the music industry? No, it's actually much easier than what seiyuu have to go through in the music industry as solo artists or joining 2D music projects. Are purists or career seiyuu a dying breed? Fortunately or unfortunately, yes. For better or worse, the seiyuu industry more than ever requires seiyuu to be versatile. Seiyuu need to have a good core of voice acting skills and on top some talent for singing. While in the 90s performing as solo artists was something that only really popular seiyuu ventured towards, or in the noughties only those bold enough would attempt, since 2017 it is something that is, in a way, expected of seiyuu. Just notice how many 2D music projects are launched every year, or how excited are music labels about all the diamonds in the rough that join the music industry and also have singing skills. Voice acting also includes singing, so that ends up being a natural transition for seiyuu. It isn't anything different to what seiyuu did in the 90s. If seiyuu do join the music industry just to make a solo debut, well, that will be a big problem for the industry itself. That would mean the seiyuu industry was being used as a stepping stone. Is a solo debut a synonym of popularity? No, there are very few cases of popular seiyuu artists among seiyuu. Is being a seiyuu that does not have a solo career a synonym of popularity? No. If seiyuu do not have a unique skill set and or their voice ages, they can easily be replaced. To conclude, I believe there is a place for both types of seiyuu in the industry, and there is the possibility for both types of seiyuu to be successful. It's not about by being a solo artist that seiyuu will be popular, or by only focusing on anime dubbing that seiyuu will be popular. It's a matter of putting the effort into being unique, polishing their skill sets, and being able to convey emotions in their work. Be the best professionals they can be. Yes, good looks give an advantage to seiyuu wanting to be singers, and it can bring them a lot of popularity. But if there is no talent, there are no looks that can save a seiyuu that doesn't know how to sing or does not put in the effort. People age, and popularity only based on looks will wither pretty quickly. Yes, contacts or networking with influential people gives an advantage to those purists seiyuu. If they are cast in popular anime, they can be really popular for a long period of time. However, if there is no talent to back up why those seiyuu are handpicked or part of a director's list of favorites, with time, those contacts or networking will be questioned for their choices and will remove those seiyuu from their favorites. If there is no talent, they will not pass regular auditions. So yeah, I believe there is place for both types of seiyuu in the industry, and there is the possibility for both types of seiyuu to be successful. And it's all a matter of seiyuu putting the effort into being unique, polish their skill sets and being able to convey emotions in their work. Do what they love, be the best professionals they can be. Both purists and multi-talented seiyuu can be successful if they put in the effort. Yes, the industry is shifting towards favoring multi-talented seiyuu, but there's still a place for career or purist seiyuu. Now tell me, do you believe seiyuu can be popular without having a solo career or joining 2D music projects? Or do you believe that purist, highly skilled seiyuu is a type of seiyuu on the verge of being replaced by multi-talented seiyuu? Let me know in the comments, and remember, leave your comments as complex or as simple as they may be, and you can be featured on upcoming episodes of Seiyuu Lounge. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly male seiyuu and music-related content, hit the subscribe button. I'll return next week with another episode of Seiyuu Lounge. Thank you for listening and see you guys around.